Thanks a lot for joining here on this call today. Coach, do people still call you that?
Usually that's all they call me, unless it's a bad name.
Well, that's the first question I have about anyone who's established a certain level of celebrity. Like, as far as I know, you're not a very public figure any longer, or do you do like regular TV appearances and stuff like that?
No, I don't. I do interviews here and there, usually from different places I've worked, or somebody wants comments. Mike Sando wants comments on the Athletic about trends or what have you, but nothing official. Let's put it that way.
So have you sort of seen yourself as going back into the private life from being in the public eye so long?
I've never. I guess I've never contemplated that because for 40 years or so, work intensive. Coaching college, coaching the NFL. So I never uh, thought about the retirement thing. But I can tell you, I highly recommend it. I enjoy it. Um, it's great being able to see the grandkids do different things, and my kids do different things that probably I wouldn't normally see.
Sure, of course. Certainly this time of year when things are getting heated up for the football season.
Exactly.
Um, well, coaching, especially some of these older coaches that stick around for so long, um, a lot of them coach at least in college and maybe in the pros a little bit as well, well into their 70s. So coaching has struck me as a kind of career that it takes a real dedicated individual, and then it's hard to let go of that because that's their identity. Was that at all a huge adjustment?
Well, and somebody gave me the advice a long, long, long time ago. You want to try to get a paycheck in football. Now, at that point, I didn't know that if that was going to be as a scout, start as a graduate assistant, position coach.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into it and you get rolling, um, then most people I know, want to know how to climb the ladder. Now it's different in everybody's circumstance. Um, but I could never sit in a cubicle. I could never,
Mm-hmm.
sit on a computer all day long, even though do a little bit of that now, looking at the internet and looking at different teams and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my time is my own. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best thing.
It wasn't a huge shock to have all this time on your hands suddenly when you were spent, so many hours a week as a coach.
You know what, Brandon, my wife agrees with this. So we just finished 45 years of marriage. Um, I'm not sure if I was an 8 to 5 dad because we always had a deprogram, reprogram at the end of this year with 4 kids and me coming in and looking through the mail and wanting to
Uh-huh.
know what we're having for dinner and how come Kyle's not sitting down here. And, I usually get told every year, or I did get told every year, you know what, we got a good system going here. Don't
Huh.
mess this up now.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
this is what we're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, it was like, buckle up. This is going to be our domestic life. This is our marriage. This is how we're going to do this as when you're a coach.
Yes.
So it's an adjustment for the whole family, I suppose, or at least now your wife, since the
No, it
kids are
is.
grown.
It is, and it's not. I don't think it's the metamorphosis every year is a little bit different because everybody's at a different space and time. What you have to get used to. Whether you're going to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grandkids practices now and games and hockey games, or whether it was having some time in New Jersey to watch my son play high school football.
Mm-hmm. And then about being a public figure, it's well. First, how long has it been since you've been coaching in the league?
So 20 years. I started in '99. My
Mm-hmm.
first job at the Eagles was as the quarterback coach for Andy Reid. We drafted a quarterback number one, Donovan McNabb. Excuse me, not number one. He was the second pick of the draft. But arguably, he had maybe the best career of that quarterback group. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of strikes me. Yesterday, I was listening to Rich Gannon, who I have a lot of respect for. Obviously, he lives here in Minnesota, met his wife here. Um, that 60 quarterbacks had been taken since the 2000 draft, 60 first round quarterbacks, and only 30 of those quarterbacks signed a second contract with the team that they were drafted by. So pretty interesting,
Yeah.
over the scope of that many years.
Right. And they say the average career in the NFL is like 3 years or something like that.
Three and a half. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Most people
so,
don't make it to a second contract.
So take advantage of those few years you have, if you even have those, and save your money and be smart and all that. Yeah. I'm guessing players get told that a lot more nowadays.
They do, and it just depends on who their agent is and who their finance person is, and if they're disciplined enough to live on an allowance. And it takes all kinds. There's some guys that blow through it. There's some guys that are very frugal with it.
It is such a wild life, though. Well, yeah, and I want to get into some of these specifics, but I just have one more question about leaving coaching and going back to a more private life. Do people still recognize you when you're out and about?
They can. I didn't have the little Fu Man deal going when I was coaching the Vikings. I always had a mustache since I guess I was late teens. My wife says put a hat on. It's a dead giveaway because I'm a balding guy, and then when they can put the face and the head together,
Yeah.
then they figure it out. I my first name is John. Went to Catholic school, so I was John for the nuns. I was Brad at home. John Bradford is my name, and so I can hide a little bit when they say, "What's your name?"
Okay.
What they call you, the podium, John
Yeah.
Childress.
Give your name at a restaurant. It's like table for John.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Exactly right. Yep.
So it's not an everyday thing. Someone stops you in the grocery store or something like that.
No, every now and then could be
Yeah.
dinner, could be a grocery store.
Did you find that aspect of fame to be enjoyable or annoying or something in between?
Well, Brandon, I'll tell you a little story. So, and my wife knows this about me. Back when I was coaching in professional football, I would say primarily, and I'd say primarily it was Philadelphia, although we had times here in Minnesota. If we were out to eat, people are generally pretty good with their time, but there's some people that barge in, and you always try to be gracious. But when they had 3 or 4 suggestions for
Oh,
how what we
Yeah.
could have done better, and how we need to give the ball to, and throw it more, run it more, blitz more, after we got about 3 or 4 questions in, my wife would usually step on my foot and
Oh.
say don't, and then my favorite reply was, and I can remember this vividly, in Minnesota, or excuse me, in Philadelphia, the guy that was questioning me, I said to him, let me ask you something. What business are you in? And it turned out that he was a mortician. And I said to him, what's crazy about what I do is, or really about what you do, I don't know anything about the funeral home business. I don't know what a casket costs. I'm not sure what embalming costs are or cremation costs are. I don't know anything about it. I'm not an expert in there, but it's really crazy that you know everything about my job and exactly how to do it. I would never suppose to tell you how to be a mortician because I don't know anything about it. But everybody knows about what I do, or at least has an opinion.
Well, they all watch it on TV. I mean, they've been watching it for years. They know exactly what to do. Yeah. They know how it all works. Well,
Yeah.
what strikes me about that is the lack of situational awareness, that having an evening out with family or your wife would be the place and time to talk about that anyway.
Well, being a fan is short for fanatic.
Sure.
That's where the name came from. So, fans are fanatics, kind of by definition. So,
Right.
doesn't surprise me.
And did you sort of see it as just part of, hey, they're the ones that ultimately support the league, buy tickets,
Yeah.
buy jerseys. So
You do. You
Yeah.
do. They're the people that are putting their fannies in the seats, and
Yeah.
know what they want to see, and so I get that. And there's something to be said for passion and for passionate fans. But probably what you said, situational awareness. Maybe
Yeah.
when the guy's putting a fork to his mouth with a mouthful of food that he's going to have to chew before he answers you. Probably not didn't work exactly.
Yeah. Well, I was actually kind of sheepish and bashful to come talk to you when you're in my gym class. So it's like, that's a good opportunity to socialize. I cannot imagine going up to you when you're in the middle of eating and doing that. But some people are more, I don't know, outgoing than others, I guess.
More fanatical than others.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in your path. You said every path is different. The coaching ladder climbing, the career in coaching is different, and it seems like you hear a lot about coaches going from amateurs to the pros, whether it's high school, college, whatever, then get to the NFL, and then it's like, oh, you're going to be a offensive line coach, you're going to be a quarterback coach, defensive backs coach, special team coach, and then you work your way up to a defensive or offensive coordinator, and then you then are in the running for head coaching jobs. Was that something like I know that does resemble some of your journey, but was
Yeah.
yours like that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's a different path, different climb for everybody. I remember when Andy Reid wanted to hire me in Philadelphia. We had worked together in 1986 in Flagstaff, Arizona. He was my offensive line coach, and I was the offensive coordinator. And
Okay.
just like Mike Holmgren told him when he was a graduate assistant back at BYU, if I ever get a job, I'm going to hire you. And it's
Hmm.
kind of hard for you to see that from where you're sitting at that point in time. Um, but yeah, I started as a graduate assistant, and you just you aspire for more. My daughter, when I moved her to New Jersey from Madison, Wisconsin, we had just won the Rose Bowl, the '98, really '99 Rose Bowl, and she told me, "Dad, you ruined my life." Yeah, which is a stab in the heart for a guy that's his only daughter, his oldest daughter, and three boys. But I tried to explain to her that if you want to be good, you want to do what you do at the highest level, and the highest level is professional football. There's 32 of those teams, and then to really climb the ladder, then to become and be a head coach in the NFL.
What
Yeah,
was she
it was
get?
a
What was she getting at when she said that? Because you were away a lot.
no, that I'm taking her and putting her in a new environment, and she already has friends, and she's a
Oh,
sophomore.
you
And
had to move out to
yeah, had to move to New
move out
Jersey
east.
of all
Okay.
places. Yeah,
Okay. Got it.
um, and it's funny how fast she adapted. She ended up going to James Madison and
Hmm.
got a 5-year master's degree in special education. Teaches over here in Orono for the last 19 years.
Oh, no kidding.
So it works. It worked out okay for her, and she found a husband in the meantime when she got here.
I didn't know Rich Gannon lived here too.
Yeah, yeah. Rich
Um,
lives on Minnetonka. I'm not sure what bay he lives on, but yeah, he's here.
wow.
Summers, I think. Summers at the Jersey Shore for Rich
Hmm.
because he's a Philadelphia guy, and then
Hmm.
back here during the beautiful season.
Hmm. Um, what got you into coaching from the start? Did you play?
I played or got a scholarship to Eastern Illinois. I transferred up to Illinois where all my buddies were at and walked on that team, and got hurt running down on a kickoff in spring football. Spring football was 30 days of hell back then. Now it's 15, and you have to ramp up and can't put pads on only so many days. Um, and so I really started as a student assistant. Gary Moeller was the head coach at the University of Illinois then, um, and I was going to be a graduate assistant either up at Northwestern with Rick Venturi, who was leaving his staff, or I was going to stay there. So I stayed there. Mo got fired, and then Mike White, who kind of brought the forward pass to the Big Ten um, in
Serious?
1980, 81. Yeah, it was always 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It was the Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechlers
Okay.
back then. And Mike was coming from the Bill Walsh, just the start of the Bill Walsh tree.
Hmm.
Um, and brought it to college football. He had been at Cal as the head coach. Um, yeah, and then he came to the University of Illinois, which is a pretty big deal. People really didn't know how to defend the pass back then.
So you took a liking to coaching pretty early on, huh?
I did, and it's the old thing, Brandon. If you have a job you love, you never work a day in your life. Now the hours are long, and the highs aren't as high as the lows are low. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and um, didn't know if I would ever learn to teach because that's what you end up doing is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But learn how to be very precise and very spot on, and I took something from every one of those jobs that I had, whether it was Illinois or Northern Arizona or the University of Utah or Wisconsin uh, or the Eagles.
What did you do at Wisconsin?
I came in as a running back coach, and then the next year was made the offensive coordinator. We had a guy named Ron Dane back then that ran for a ton of yards, and Coach Alvarez had a very wasn't successful going when I first got there. I think they were 1-10.
Wow.
Then we went 5-6 a couple of years, and then the next year we went to the Rose Bowl in 1983, or excuse me, 93. 10 years later.
So then you followed Andy Reid, or you went to the NFL with Andy Reid out in the Eagles.
I did, and in this business, especially the National Football League, it's a win or go home. The NFL not for long deal. Andy said, "Come on, you come here. I'm going to teach you everything it takes to be in the National Football League, and as we go here, you'll have opportunities to be a head coach." And I thought, well, you know what? I know Andy, and you can't in the NFL. It's so important. You can't underestimate how important it is to work for a guy you know and trust, as opposed to somebody you might be signing on with that somebody's told you about him or what have you. But I worked with Andy, rode to work with him in the morning in Northern Arizona, and so I feel like I know him and knew his family, and trusted him, and that's a big thing, especially when you get to that level and the pressure builds up.
So they don't throw you under the bus or something?
Throw you under the bus or know that he's got a plan. He knows what makes the world go round. Hey, who we draft and who we pick, and he's into all the personnel.
Okay.
And allow you to grade players as well, and have some say so, on who might be your backup or who would you draft, Brad, if they come to you.
Yeah, you have to trust them not just in a teammate sense, like he's got your back, but also in a like he knows what he's doing sense.
Yeah, and on the other hand, he has to be able to trust the fact that he's seen you coach before. He knows what style, what your work ethic is. Are you going to be a guy that's chasing around? Are you going to be a guy that's about the job? Because again, you see one of everything when you're in this business as long as I've been in.
So what made you audition or interview for the Viking role? What was it about that job that attracted you?
Well, I thought it was probably the best of the ones that were open. Sean Payton went to New Orleans. I think Gary Kubiak ended up going to the Texans. And I'm trying to think who else was open at the time. But being a Midwest guy, and I'd watched Bud Grant. I grew up watching Chicago Bears football, so I knew exactly who Bud Grant was and what the Vikings were about. It had the right feel to it. I had calls to leave Minneapolis and come interview at Green Bay when Mike McCarthy got that job. Ted Thompson was the GM, and Charlie Casserly was down at the Texans then as the GM. But I never made it out of Minnesota to interview in any of those other places.
So talk about coming to Minnesota. Like, what are some of your first impressions? Or I guess what I'm getting at is you're still here part time. You have a place here, so there's something about this and Minnesota that attracted you. And we said earlier, Rich Gannon has a place here, so he kind of married a Minnesotan, so maybe that's part of it. But
Yeah.
I don't think you did, but you still found that this was a place to keep your home after not coaching here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talk about
Granted,
living in Minnesota and being
yeah.
here.
So it's funny, Bud Grant, on my interview, the process went late into the night one night. Um, and the Wilfs said, "Okay, let's call it quits." It's maybe 1:30 in the morning, and
Jeez.
they said, "Coach, you've got to be tired." And I said, "Look, you just got me 2 days after the season. We can go all night long if you want to, because I'm in season mode." And they said, "No, no, no.
What does that
Let's.
mean? What does that
Uh,
mean?
what do you mean? How much longer in season mode?
Yeah, what does
You're,
in season mode mean?
I mean, it's late nights. It can be 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning before you're prepped to do your deal the next day. Whether it's installing plays or whether it's coming up with a red zone. We had a certain set schedule when we did short yardage, goal line, red zone, and a lot of times it'd go into the wee hours of the night. Um, I know some coaches say if you don't make a decision after 9 p.m., but that wasn't us.
Uh huh.
I did some sleeping in my office, which Andy routinely did. He's a guy that I still send him articles about sleep deprivation, and he's one of those guys that operates on 3 or 4 hours. I
Wow.
send him an article, at least one article every year, and he goes, "Yeah, that's a good article. Kind of made me sleepy." So he's got a great sense of humor, but again, he was. We were all sleep deprived at the time.
What would you be talking about with the Wilfs until 1 a.m.? I
Well,
can't imagine an interview going that long,
oh
depending
yeah,
on when you
well,
started.
put it this way: they had a plane waiting, and I probably didn't get on that plane till 5:30 or 6:30, and then flew to Minneapolis. And by the time you get introductions going, you sit around a table. They ordered some food. Um, yeah, it was easy to get to 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and
Hmm.
they have questions on everything from how did you travel to assistant coaches and contracts and discipline. How would you handle this, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess the crux of this story is that went to 1:30. They called it off and they said, "We'll start. Can we start tomorrow at 9:30?" I go, "Well, yeah. I mean, I'm used to going to bed at 1:30 and being up at 5:30." Um, and they said, "Coach, we just want to ask you something. Do you care if Bud Grant comes tomorrow and sits in on your meeting?" I'm like, that's like Vince Lombardi, coming, or Tom Landry coming to sit in my meeting. What am I going to say? No, I prefer that Bud doesn't come. So Bud shows up and sits all the way at the end of the table, um, big conference table, and the questions are going back and forth. I think Kevin Warren was there, who's the president of the Bears now, and Rob Brzezinski was there, who's the salary cap still at the Vikings, and Mark and Ziggy Wilf. Um, and so Bud sits there as they're asking me questions, and how would you do this? How would you do that? And then they said, well, um, he's not saying a word. He's got his hands folded at the end of the table. Kind of, you can see Bud being solemn and quiet, and he just kind of looking back and forth at the questions and the answers. And they said, well, who should have the final say on the 53-man roster? And I said, well, the model that I come from, the head coach should have that say, because if they think somebody else has the hammer, uh, then they're trying to impress that person as opposed to trying to impress the guy that's coaching them.
Hmm.
And they said, well, the Wilfs did. They said, we're going to hire a general manager, and what? Sure, we. And at the end of the table, I feel a hand go up, and it's Bud Grant. And finally, everybody realizes that the hand goes up, and they said, yeah, Bud, what's on your mind? And he said, he points and he says, the head coach ought to have final say of the players on the roster. It was like E.F. Hutton was speaking. And they
Hmm.
went, okay, I get it. So that was interesting. And Bud and I had numbers of interesting conversations. He was a great resource.
Hmm. Yeah, he's like Minnesota royalty. So
He is.
he's on the Minnesota Mount Rushmore, at least the sports Mount Rushmore, if there
No
was
doubt.
one.
no doubt, and a great person.
And I guess you were used to locker room culture and sports culture, and I suppose to some degree sports media, the reporters, what it was like in the NFL, the pressure. And was that all just turned up a notch then when you're a head coach as opposed to an assistant?
Well, I feel like I got a pretty good baptism in it, being with the Philadelphia media.
Okay.
They always wrote with an edge.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Lyon was a columnist then, and he had a great way about him. I mean, he had a way with words and putting them on paper. But it's very aggressive out there. The old city of brotherly love. People say that kind of tongue in cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've walked with Andy off the field before at his request and said, "Listen to this." And we walked in through one of the portals, and people are hanging over the side. I can't repeat here what all the things they had to say.
Yeah,
about
Philadelphia fans are notorious for being
Yeah. So I
rude
felt like I had a pretty good runway for that. But then when you're the face of the franchise and you have to go in front of the reporters and the media every day, or I should say 3 or 4 days a week.
mm-hmm.
There's different ways to parse it. And anytime you're in a place that has two different newspapers, you got a Pioneer Press here and a Star Tribune here. Anytime you got two newspapers, you have different people vying for things, and so it's a competitive environment. And I get that they gotta write.
That's true.
Column every day.
Yeah. So did you establish pretty good relationships with the sports writers at both papers?
I wouldn't say completely, but they're usually with you win or tie, and you can't tie anymore.
Oh, is that so? They got rid of the tie?
Yeah, it's overtime now. I mean, no, you got to go to overtime to play. Back then, they didn't even have overtimes. Now they're 10-minute overtimes, and it could end up tied.
Okay. But in general, I can imagine the Minnesota media being a little less edgy, maybe a little more, I don't know, soft or gentle.
Yeah.
Or
yeah. I think probably Watergate changed everything. The investigative journalism part of it, the asking the piercing questions. Bud was the last guy, and the NFL made him do it. He was the last guy to allow women in the locker room after that had started. Bud still was against that because he was an old salt, and he just didn't feel like women should be walking around where guys are walking around naked. But yeah, I would say there's very few homers. Probably Sid Hartman comes as close to being somebody that pulled for the University of Minnesota or the Timberwolves or the Vikings or whoever. And he had a great relationship with the Wilfs, and I had a great relationship with Sid.
Was it a culture shock, or were you pretty used to the Midwestern vibe or personality, having grown up in Chicagoland?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a personality shock. In Philadelphia, it was. I mean, if you don't drive your shopping cart with an edge, or your car with an edge, or check out in a checkout line with an edge, people were going to mow you right over. And you had to learn that. And actually, that's part of the deprogram, reprogram I had with my wife and my family when they came from New Jersey. Everybody was so nice. The Minnesota nice was real. And I can give you a short example of that, Brandon.
Sure.
My wife used to shop at Acme in New Jersey. And that sounds like something from the Roadrunner, if you remember those days. The car Acme, whatever,
sure.
Pebbles or whatever. So
yeah, Dynamite.
TNT.
Dynamite.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so in New Jersey, you shop at the Acme, you put all your stuff on the counter, and basically the person that checks you out, you go to the end, you open your checkbook or take out your credit card, and the person goes through and looks at it and says $103.75. You write the check, hand it to them, you're done. Bags, the groceries are bagged, no interaction. So that's what you're used to for 6 years, 7 years. Now you come here and you go to Cub Food and you put your stuff on the counter. They check it out, and as the lady's doing it, my wife had the checkbook in her hand, wanting the number, and the lady's checking it, saying, "Isn't it a beautiful day out there? I mean, look at the clouds and 70 degrees, no humidity." Your jaw kind of locks up because you're not used to doing it that way, and this person is being so nice to you. You're like, "Just tell me how much I owe you."
Yeah, yeah. Or
So,
maybe
so
you're in that mode of being in a hurry, so you feel like you're being held up or something.
right,
But yeah,
right. Um,
huh.
so that was a big culture shock for my wife, my kids, even though my wife grew up in the Midwest just like I did.
Hmm. Now I know, and we'll get to this, the famous season with Brett Favre, and was that Adrian Peterson's rookie year too, where you went to
No, it
the
was Percy
championship
Harvin's
game?
rookie. It was Percy
Okay,
Harvin's rookie year, and he ended up being the rookie of the year with Favre as his quarterback.
was that your third year here?
Gosh, it all blends together. I think
Yeah.
we took Chad Greenway as our first pick of my watch, and then Adrian either was the next year or the following year. I think it was 3 years in before Adrian came.
Okay. So you're 3, 4 years in, and then you get Brett Favre, and I mean, man, those suddenly you might have a media that resembles something you remember in other cities where there's a little bit more pep and excitement and edge. I don't know, maybe because it's like
Yeah,
such a controversial signing.
yeah,
Um,
I know. It goes back to something, Brandon, that we played a playoff game against the Eagles, who came and beat us here in Minnesota, um, to go on, I think, to the NFC Championship game that year.
was that with
Um,
Andy Reid?
that was with Andy, so coaching against Andy,
Yeah.
and I remember going down after I talked to the team and kind of licked our wounds a little bit, and the season's over, and there's so much finality to it. Um, I remember going down and just wanting to talk with him after the game in a less competitive atmosphere. We talked before the game, but not the same way. And I mentioned to you already, very close with Andy and his family. And, one of the things he said sitting there was, "You got a good football team. If you can figure that quarterback thing out, you'll have a hell of a
Mm,
football team." And so, not like I didn't know that, but it just lodged in there. It's, you're trying. Who you gonna find? Who you gonna find? Who's gonna be your guy? Is it Tavares Jackson? Is it um, Brett Favre wasn't out there then, so that wasn't an issue. That didn't happen until after the draft. That
mm,
the Jets took Mark Sanchez, and then they cut Brett Favre, or Sage Rosenthal. Who was it going to be? Um, and then Favre became available, and all ships rise in a rising tide. He was good. He had a good team around him defensively, offensively. We had some tools, and he was kind of the straw that stirred the drink.
mm. Was it hotly debated amongst administration of the team whether to bring in someone like Favre, or was it all like on the same page as far as, well, if we can get him, we're going to get him?
Uh, no, I felt like it was a slam dunk that
Mm,
if we could get him
mm,
and pay him what he wanted to play, because I looking at his tape the year before he tore his biceps tendon, um, he was the same old Brett Favre. I mean,
mm-hmm,
he, he,
mm.
he could sling it. I'm not sure he can't still sling it today. He's just one of
Yeah,
those guys where that part will always work, I think.
just natural. Yeah. Well, you strike me as a guy who's a natural coach. I mean, if you can handle those hours and handle the media pressure and all that, there's something special about. I think you found your calling, especially since you said you never really worked a day in your life doing something you enjoy.
Yeah, and Brendan, uh, I let's go back a little bit further with me. In high school, my mom and dad got divorced, and I know that's happens more and more every day. At least from my college recruiting experience, single parent homes were there. My
Uh-huh.
mom and dad got divorced, and I was a quarterback on my high school football team, and I was getting ready to run away from home. Really not, you know, typical in the throes of hormone and being a teenager and all that. And I was up at my buddy Louis Downs' house, and Coach Dickerson had gotten my coach had gotten wind of it somehow, and I'm trying to run out the front door, which he's coming in the back door, and he goes, "Hey, where the hell are you going?" And he grabbed hold of me. He says, "You know what? You're my starting quarterback, and you're gonna come and live in my house in the basement by my rules, do it my way, and that's all there is. That's the way it's going to be." Something like, okay, here's an authority figure, a father figure, um, that's taking an interest, and basically he's not going to have it any other way. And he was too big and brash of a guy and a good football coach, and good person, that I didn't push back. So I lived with him for a year and a half in high school. So, and
Wow.
he used to say, "You're going to get into coaching." I said, "You know what? Coaching's the last thing that I'm going to get into. You know, I see how you work, coach in high school. I was going to be a psychology major. I was going to get abnormal psychology was the thing that you know excited me the most. Learning how people's minds went bad, whether it's schizophrenia or paranoia or just the And I got to say, I've used that degree every day of my life in coaching. With the players that I had in the room.
Yeah, once in a while, some of that sneaks out when there's a serious case. Like, was it Everson Griffin here in the last 5 years who
Yeah, we
had
drafted
some?
Everson.
Oh, okay. Was he the one who had some serious
Uh,
diagnosis of mental health
uh,
stuff?
I guess I can't really speak to that. I just saw him, I think, as a rookie. But I know coming up from Kansas City to playing the Vikings out when the Vikings were playing at University of Minnesota. That's where we played Mike Zimmer's team, and he was supposed to play that day, and he somehow melted down that
Hmm.
Sunday morning. And I followed it on the internet a little bit. He's had some issues.
Yeah, but I
It
mean,
can happen.
yeah, sure. But even besides the extreme case, um, egos and young guys with a bunch of money, and the NBA is really notorious for the womenizing. I don't know how the NFL young guys handle all that, but like, how do you? I mean, if a lot of that is just normalized, that there's going to be big egos, there are going to be nights out, there's going to be partying. I don't know. I mean, it just it seems like a lot to try to contain to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
Do you make strict rules like, look, like no doing this or that? You're adults. You can do whatever but no. If you do this, you're I don't know.
Yeah.
Like how do you handle that?
Well, I was kind of brought in uh, right behind the Love Boat scandal
Yep.
here,
Yep.
and so I kind of had a mandate to straighten the place out, and had to talk to a bunch of football players that first year about things as crazy as this is going to sound. Things like no dogs in the locker room, and people go, "Wait, you have to tell a professional." Yeah, they brought dogs over there on Friday afternoon. Somebody almost lost their hand from getting bit by a dog. No dogs in the indoor facility. In the winter, they used to let their dogs come in and run around, and
Hmm.
the dogs would crap on the field. Should you have to be talking to professional men like that? You shouldn't, but you had to kind of get the way you want it to be the way you want it to be. Um, and I thought that was needed at the time. And then your question about how do you get him to you've got to try to find good people that are good football players. Um, I remember having a conversation after a Monday night game where Bill Belichick beat us at New England. I think Mwelde Moore had a punt return for a touchdown. You could go back and look that up. But I talked to him, Bill, on the phone on Monday, and I said, I really aspire to have a team like yours that's tough mentally, that's smart football wise, uh, that you get the most out of. And he was kind of quiet, and when I said that to him, I don't know if he thought I was goofing him or what, but then his reply was, he goes, Brad, really, it's pretty simple, and it's going back to what we talked about, Brad. It's pretty simple. Our best players are our best people, are the best
Mm-hmm.
citizens, and so if you can establish that culture, then you got something. And obviously that goes back to who you take, who you draft, doing all your background information on them, because you can't get overly seduced by their athleticism if you
Mm-hmm.
know that they've got skeletons in the closet. Let's put it that way. Not that we never took anybody that did anything wrong. We did, but we tried not to.
Did you look away at, kind of look the other way when you knew some players were out partying too late, or there were some personal issues in their lives, family issues, or maybe two players didn't get along? I mean, how involved would you get? I mean, especially given that a coach was very involved in your upbringing.
I don't think you can go back and rewrite time for those guys. You can just let them know expectations when they come in the door. Here's what goes with you being a Minnesota Viking, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be at quarterback or as an offensive line guy, or somebody playing on the defensive side of the football. Um, my model was I wanted to spend time with the offense. I wanted to have a defensive coordinator, kind of like Andy had at the Eagles, that ran the defense, took care of the defense. I didn't have to worry about the defense.
Okay.
Um, I was Jim Johnson at Philadelphia, and then I hired Mike Tomlin here,
Mm.
who, you know, only stayed a year, but he had another opportunity. And then I hired Leslie Frazier, who ended up succeeding me for a couple of years as a head coach.
Mm.
So I felt like I had good people on that side of the ball and they know my beliefs and how we were going to operate in the building and what kind of people we had to be and that type of thing.
Is the NFL like a company, or is it more like the military or something like that when it comes to chain of command? How does that all, like if a player got out of line or made a mistake on the field, would they come to you, or would you go to them, or would they go to their defensive coordinator or to their quarterback coach or their defensive,
That
like
you
how
know
does that all work?
that's an interesting question. Back back when I started in Philadelphia in '99, um, the the measure of your uh, not player personnel guy, but your player programs guy. Um, in this case, it was Les Pico here, who did a great job here at the Vikings, but it was a different mandate. Back in the day, back in '99 or the '90s, it was basically what could you cover up? Like if a guy got a DUI, um,
Hmm.
could somebody make it go away in Philadelphia? Um, and you say, well, how does that happen? Well, if you could do it, secretively, you did that. But then the rules changed in the NFL, and if you had a behavior problem, whether it was uh, going 102 miles an hour through St. Peter's like Corin Robinson did, um, they said you couldn't cut anybody except for their talent, what was going on with their talent.
Mm.
I had words with Commissioner Goodell about that. I said, listen, Roger, that's not what I'm coaching here. That's not what I'm selling here. I mean, guys got to be responsible and accountable. They got to be good football players, but I can't have people acting like that, or everybody will think they can act like that. And so we waived him, and Green Bay picked him up, and he led the NFL in kickoff return yardage for 3 games, so they suspended him, and then nobody heard of him again.
Hmm. So he was mad at you for cutting him, and then they suspended him anyway.
Yeah, they did.
Hmm.
It's just not in a timely fashion. It's not like justice comes on
Uh,
2 or 3 days after
yeah. Yeah.
after the facts. They wanted to let the court things play out.
Were you did you have a hard time cutting people, firing coaches, doing any of that? That always strikes me as a difficult task for managers.
Yeah, very hard, very hard because um, you're stopping somebody from fulfilling maybe a lifelong dream, um, and I always went with this mantra that all a man wants to know is where he stands. He ever wants to know is where he stands. Hey, and if you're not afraid to come in this door and talk to me, that's great. And all they want to know is, hey, it's good, it's bad, it's horse shit. Pick it up. You need to hustle more. You need to make more. I could tell you where you stood in terms of the football team or behaviorally. I mean, those were
That
other
direct.
things.
Yeah,
I mean,
go
as
ahead.
opposed to telling the assistant coach to tell Joe,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I don't want to hear that Joe's out till all hours of the night. I mean, just dealt with it one on one, and it might have been on the field. Take a guy aside and whisper in his ear and let it go from there.
Um, that actually strikes me because I have some thoughts as to why Minnesota struggles to get over the hump, and I think it parallels the Minnesota personality. I think sports teams in general reflect the culture where they're based,
Mm-hmm.
if just slightly, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Minnesota teams tend to be very talented, typically pretty well run. Um, so they got like they have a lot of pieces in place, and they often have a very talented club. So some of the better players in the league, whether it's Kevin Garnett to Adrian Peterson to Joe Mauer,
Right.
but Minnesota lacks that real uh, kick them while they're down. Uh, that edge, perhaps as you described it in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you. Uh, I think that's exactly what Minnesota needed at the time, and may need in general, is a coach that's going to be really direct, not beat around the bush as maybe we're apt to do, but yet when there was that opportunity to really punch it in, make that big step
Yeah.
to the Super Bowl in 2009, how do you how do you reflect on that game, to get back to that season with Brett Favre? I mean,
Yeah.
I watch it. The turnovers were so uncanny that it almost felt to me, and this is getting a little out there, but it was almost like the Minnesota vibe. The Minnesota was doing all it could to fight against a better team, and if it took one more pick, one more fumble, because apparently 5 fumbles or turnovers wasn't enough. We needed to get a 6th one in there at the very end, and then some phantom calls against the Vikings to allow the Saints to. I mean, were you just scratching your head, going, "What is going on here?" Because it just seems supernatural how odd that game went.
Well, you know, as the head football coach, you're responsible for all of it. So I have to take, there's culpability in having 12 guys in the huddle, which was a big penalty at the end of that game. Um, you know, Favre, the gunslinger, to sprint out and throw back, that's not something that anybody coaches. Although, as things evolve, here we are 20 years later, and everybody's trying to be Patrick Mahomes, who does all those things, those crazy
Mm-hmm.
things. Now,
Mm-hmm.
everybody doesn't have the arm talent to be able to do that. And I don't know that if I felt there was any Minnesotan coming out. I just know we didn't have a 2 turnover game all year long, let alone a 3 turnover game. Going in from the 4 yard line or 5 yard line, it just uh, you know you can't say, well, if that didn't happen, we would have beat. No, but it did happen, and ball security is the number one statistic on whether you win or lose football in the National Football League. Turnovers are the number one factor. Um,
Was
and
there just 3 in that game? Am I
no, I think
exaggerating, or was there like
no,
5?
I mean, there was like 5, uh,
Yeah.
and it kind of finished with Favre sprinting out and throwing back, and gave them a chance to have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you this, Brandon. I mean, the highs aren't as high as the lows are low. When you come that close and you think you've had a good game plan, and I feel like we were able to do what we wanted to do, running the ball, throwing the ball. I thought our defense was exceptional. Turnovers end up quashing the whole thing.
Did you feel? Oh yeah, I imagine the low from that would be to lose to a team that outplays you is one thing, but to kind of beat yourself in such a way that was uncharacteristic of the team that you had all year, uh, I don't know. Like, do you just, all right, back to the drawing board? It happened. It is what it is.
Yeah, you got to take some. You got to take some time. You got to get away from it. I mean, to get perspective, because you're in the dregs. Getting back on that plane, flying back to Minneapolis. Um, there was the Bounty Gate thing that ended up coming up after that, and I sent a bunch of clips to the National Football League of, I mean, in my mind, no doubt late hits. I think Pete Morelli called one or two roughing the passers. They could have called it from the first play on, um, but you can't make excuses about that, because it doesn't help you in the long run. I mean, in the long run, you say, what do you know for sure? Hey, you turn the ball over 5 times. It's rare that you can overcome that as a football
Mm-hmm.
team.
And you focused on that rather than feeling uh, uh, cheated or
Yeah, we made it to the NFC Championship game. Yeah, I had been to at Philadelphia. We went to 4 NFC Championship
uh,
games and didn't get to the Super Bowl till the fourth time. Um, I've said before, there's something bad about back when they played a Pro Bowl in Hawaii. Well, the person that lost the championship game, because it's 2 weeks to the Super Bowl, got on a plane and went to Hawaii and coached
uh-huh,
the All Stars.
uh-huh.
And I said there, I told my wife, I said, this is kind of sick, but you shouldn't know your way out of the Honolulu airport to know exactly where you're driving to on that island, being there that many times.
Uh,
I said, this is, it's a cynical thing to say, but I don't ever want to go back to Hawaii, just because what that represents.
mm-hmm.
It's a great trip from a weather standpoint, but it really means that, you're second in your division, and the division leaders playing in the Super Bowl.
um, like I remember the Vikings last year when they played. I don't remember who they played, but there was that face mask at the end, and
Yeah.
then it caused. Oh, come on, the quarterback. What's his name? Sam Darnold, to
Yeah.
to get that safety, and that was the game. I remember like thinking, as a fanatic myself on occasion, I like to say less so than I used to be, but I remember thinking, well, he shouldn't even go out there for the kickoff. Kevin O'Connell should have all his players just stay on the sideline. I'm being all obstinate and difficult, like,
Yeah.
like I would really do that. But I'm thinking like, oh, that would be so cool if Kevin O'Connell said, you know what? No, we're not going to play. If the refs are going to cheat us like that, guys, just don't even go out on the field for the kickoff. We're going to stay all right here. But he didn't do that. And so I'm impressed at how, I guess, good-natured, even if it is after burying some anger, how good-natured the coach is, and they get it. Refs make mistakes, whatever. You got to just keep playing. This is the league. So if you're fighting the league, you're not going to win. You got to just play ball with what's happening, right? Like there's an acceptance there, even if you get the short end of the stick.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you don't voice your opinion to them. I mean, I've hollered at quite a few officials over the years, with their back to me, and know I had gone too far. If usually when the guy turned around and said, "Coach, you want to say that again? You want to repeat that?" And you didn't, but he got the message. Yeah, you have to live with it. And you know what? Officiating is a tough deal. These guys are getting bigger, faster, stronger, and they have the replay that'll take you down to the thousandths of a second, so you can discern whether or not was it a catch, no catch.
You talk about a thankless job, reffing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there's, I hate to say it, but with all the new faces that I'm seeing that are referees this year, I stay up with the preseason games and I look and go, I've never seen that guy before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've never seen that guy before. I've never seen that guy before. There's new blood coming in, and with that, they're going to have to officiate at the level that the NFL is playing at, and you're bound to see more of those. Because you can't. you can only challenge a certain amount of things. You can't challenge whether that face mask was a face mask or not.
At the height of your coaching, and by height I mean like when there was the most activity and noise around it. I'm sure that was when it was during that '09 season. It was hard to, in terms of media attention and stuff. It's tough to beat having Favre come and take your team to the championship game and then lose in a game like that. But in general, when you're in the media a lot, would you go online and just search Brad Childress, just Google your own name, or were you like, no, I'm not even going to read that stuff because
No,
that I'm just gonna, or if there was a sports story, and then there was a bunch of comments about following, would you read that stuff, or did you? How do players? Did you tell them not to read the comments, or talk about that whole aspect?
it's interesting you say that because I used to do a little deal, maybe once a week, on pulled from the newspapers, pulled from the clips of aberrant behavior by somebody else on another team. Sometimes it would be on our team if somebody spoke to the media and maybe told some secrets or put up bulletin board material, or were talking about somebody besides their position. Yeah, how do you think the quarterback's playing? That was one of the coaching points was, look, you want to talk about yourself, talk all you want about yourself, but we don't talk about injuries. We don't talk about how other people are playing. We just don't do that. I think that's kind of important, that you don't run your mouth, what I mean? Less is more, I guess is how I put it.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue about. We actually mentioned that at the gym recently. You held up your phone and said, "This thing right here."
Yeah.
Everyone's a reporter. Everyone's a videographer now. Everyone can capture everything. Every player can go on social media and have their own. They can be their own.
Yeah.
They can be an influencer, right? They don't need to sign a deal with a promotion company and you can be on State Farm commercials like some athletes are. They can just go on and start logging their day-to-day life, and they'll get a bunch of followers because they're on a team or whatever. But I'm going to actually go back to that previous question of like reading what people are saying about you. Did you take heed of any of that? Did you read the comments? Did you listen to the sports talk shows on KFan the following Monday?
And listen,
any of that stuff?
You don't have time to listen to any of that stuff. I mean, or read any of that stuff. You're taken away from who you're going to play the next week or 2 weeks, or what you're going to do during the bye.
Okay.
I mean, somebody would flip clips on my desk every day, and you try to find out what was going along through the league. But you had no time to get on and scroll, and why you want to beat yourself up? Somebody's beating you up already. My wife would probably tell me, or somebody would say something to me, and I go, yeah, goes with the territory, part of the job.
Well, that's admirable that you understood that and were able to just ignore it largely. Did you ever see players get wrapped up in that? Maybe they're starting to fight with people in the comments, anything like that?
You know what? I don't remember anybody right offhand that I can remember pulled from the newspapers, putting clips up of maybe Darren Sharper saying something about Green Bay, and he'd been there before, and it okay. Sucks, and you're just kind of like, why do we want to do that to ourselves? We're playing the Packers this week.
Speaking of social media and I don't know, that just in general gets me thinking about, and you mentioned the referees having to try to keep up with players that are bigger, stronger, faster. There are a number of ways, whether it's the athleticism, whether it's social media, whether it's the commercialization of the big games, at least the nationally televised games, and how the halftime shows go on for what seems like 45 minutes to watch some musical performance. And for these real big events, Thanksgiving, Super Bowl, it's like the game is almost secondary to all the ways in which they can sponsor it and look at the celebrities in the audience, etc. Um, I don't know. Like, do you see it growing in a way that's deleterious to the game itself? Whether it's and there's a number of ways. Whether it's the players are getting just too fast to be contained in the field, we need to rewrite some of the rules to accommodate that, or maybe it's the you know we're looking at the players' girlfriends in the booths more than we're actually paying attention to the activity out on the field. I mean, all this stuff happening. What do you think watching all that
You know
as a
what?
former coach?
I look at it that we're in the entertainment business. Anytime let's say you have a radio station and you are Paul Allen and you got 50% of the board lit up, or you got the whole board lit up, and 50% are with what happened and
Mm-hmm.
50% are against what happened. And you got a hell of a show, because there's a good back and forth. But um, it's the entertainment industry. You have to coach your team differently when you go to a Super Bowl. Uh, it's you have to make that happen because a pro halftime is only 10 minutes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally, you got time to come down, relieve yourself, say a couple words to your position group, and then run back up to the press box to be there for the kickoff. The Super Bowl, you know what that halftime show is. And that's to sit and sit and sit and sit and sit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different animal. And so you got to rehearse that. You got to take them off, say
Mm.
this is how
Wow.
long it is. And one of the things I learned going to the
Stay
Super Bowl,
stay loose.
yeah, New England, exactly. New England at the beginning of the Super Bowl, before they even play the national anthem, they do the big introduction of both teams. Well, you watched our guys at Philadelphia run on a team. Well, Philadelphia, excuse me. New England ran. We played New England. New England ran on the field. All those guys went over, took their helmets off, and sat on a bench. Us, on the other hand, having been this is our first time to the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, we ran on the field. Guys were doing sprints back and forth, warm
Mm.
ups, tosses, all that, and there's still 25 minutes till game time.
Ah.
And
Okay.
so the guys that had been there before, I'm up in the press box, so I'm looking at it and going, "Hello, these guys are all resting here before the big thing starts. Our guys are all up on their feet, all moving back and forth. There's a nervous energy going, and it takes 25 minutes to pour itself out.
Uh huh.
Um, so, I mean, there's something to being good year after year, just like Kansas City being this many Super Bowls. They know exactly
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing in the pregame, what they're doing at halftime, how they're going to rehydrate,
Yeah.
how they're going to
Yeah.
change clothes,
Do do
get
you
out
worry
of wet
about
stuff.
do you worry about the integrity of the game? Sometimes I worry about football being um, mm, like the players are becoming too athletic, too fast, and it's taking away from the the quality of the game because um, players are always susceptible to being injured more often because they hit harder, they run faster, so they're calling more penalties on unnecessary roughness, and that slows down and interrupts a drive. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess between that and like the commercialization I mentioned, also, do you still feel good about the game itself and whether it's a quality product that's being put out on the field?
I feel like it's a quality product. I feel like everything that the league is doing now is safety based. Whether it's they're calling it dynamic kickoff, so that
Mm-hmm.
there's enough big collisions that happen naturally, um, that where if you can take some of those collisions down, if you can bring those concussions down, those head injuries down, um, that's a good thing. Whether it's helmet technology, whether it's making sure a guy wears all his pads, but at its heart, football will always be. Remember Tommy Brazier, our old defensive line coach. We go to the playoffs in our second year at Philly, and he had never been. He'd been in the league for 17 years. And he says, "Don't take this for granted, man. This is." He goes, "Let me tell you something. The National Football League is a man whip a man game. A man whip a man, and so really it comes down to those one-on-one
It's
in the
still
trenches.
it's still one. I was gonna say it's still one and lost in the trenches.
Still one loss in
Yeah.
the trenches, and you're only good as you are up front. It starts up front. Um, but I think with the changes that they have every year, I mean, for instance, they changed the overtime rules after uh, New Orleans
Hmm.
went down and scored right away, and game's over without us ever seeing the ball. Um, Probably a good change. Ziggy was a more of a fundamentalist. Whether it's us changing jerseys or putting some black piping on, we wanted to be I wanted us to be the Minnesota Vikings that were Bud Grant's, that same uniform. But, they changed outfits. They changed, they went to the colors, whatever they call it, the all one color rush game. Some of
Hmm.
that stuff is, part of the circus, I guess,
Hmm.
of the National Football League. But make no mistake, it's entertainment.
Hmm. Yeah, and it seems in some ways it's more so when at least during a big nationally televised game. But you still watch a lot of football, I'm guessing. You said you were watching preseason earlier, and
Oh yeah, yep.
you're pretty you follow the
I, I
league.
I know the Gophers are opening on Thursday, and I know University of Wisconsin. You follow certain people where people
Oh,
and
sure.
places. People you've worked with before. Um, Follow all those guys, and then there's different teams and coaches that I like to watch. So I'm excited
Yeah,
for football to ramp up.
you must have a special place in your heart for a few teams in the league that you worked for, huh?
I do, I do. I mean, I'm always pulling for Kansas City. I'm always keep an eye on my hometown Bears.
Hmm.
Um, for me growing up, I always keep an eye now on the hometown Vikings. From having coached up here, always want to know what Philadelphia's doing. Kind of feel
Yeah.
like I got a pulse of that. So, yeah, if you follow football, you follow football. And some you follow a little deeper and closer than others.
Well, so let's kind of look at wrapping up here. And I got some questions that I threw. I threw this out on Facebook, and I asked friends if they might have a question for you, because I told them I was interviewing you here today, and I'll share these. So Colin asks, "Who is the best talent you've ever coached?"
Oh, I'd say probably Adrian Peterson. I mean, just what he was able to do. I can remember him from our very first rookie mini camp. Just watching you hand the ball to him and watching what he could do with the ball. And shoot, some of Adrian's runs were for 0 or +1. They may have been the best just getting back to the line of scrimmage. But I'd probably say Adrian over the years.
You drafted him.
We did, yeah.
Were
And I
you
think
su-
he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he's eligible in a few years.
were you surprised he because what draft position did he come? Did you guys have that year?
I think we got him at 6 or 7,
Okay.
if my recollection serves. But I know we were keeping our fingers crossed. Arizona picked right before us and picked an offensive tackle, Levi somebody.
Mm.
And then we were all ecstatic that
Mm.
Adrian Peterson was still
Mm.
there for us to snag.
Dustin asks about discipline. We talked about that, but he specifically says that you were brought in here because you were following the love boat, and you were
Yep.
known as a more of a disciplinarian, and yet you had guys like Brett Favre, and for a time you had Randy Moss here. So some of these big personality, difficult maybe to contain individuals. How did that all square?
Um, you have a way to you run the program. You hand them a packet at the beginning, just kind of some rules and regs. You hit it in your opening meeting. What's important to you? Um, what's not negotiable? What is negotiable?
Hmm.
Um, I was always a big, hey, fly on a team plane, come home on a team plane. I don't know anybody that
Hmm.
doesn't do it that way. I think I've let one person stay in see a child that maybe they were taking to school the next day,
Mm.
which sounded like a reasonable request as long as he was going to be back, in good time to watch the last film and get ready for the next week.
Did you ever take a player under your wing the way your coach did for you? I know it's different because you were not an adult and the players you coached in the NFL were, but did you ever pull one aside and say, just give them some personal, or was that too personal for you?
No, you know what I found, Brandon, was, anytime you can give a guy in the NFL, because it is such a short lifespan, anytime you can give him a tip or a coaching point, or put something in his brain that's going to help him play better, which is in the long run going to lead to his longevity in the league. Um, they gobble that stuff up, and so they know if you're somebody that's able. I don't care if it's me talking to a tight end or, hey, this is how the quarterback's looking at this, so you need to be a little more friendly here, and he'll throw you the ball there. They gobble that stuff up because just to be able to stay another week, another couple weeks, another month, another year, and get it going forward, that was always important.
What about personal matters like you were dealing with in high school? Like if a player lost a parent or you knew they were going through something difficult, would you ever pull them
Yeah,
aside or anything like
you
that?
know what? I can look back and I can say this now. I that there's a situation that I didn't handle very well, and somebody's grandmother had died, and I didn't understand the fact that he was going to be gone all week long, with us having a game at the end of the week. And I guess what it taught me is that everybody grieves differently, um, and some people are put in the ground the next day. Some people they wait 2 weeks, but everybody grieves differently, and you just have to see how all that comes together. I was pretty harsh with this individual, and in hindsight, it was it was stupid.
Hmm. Harsh because they miss so much practice and stuff.
Yeah, because I spoke poorly of them, that they didn't come back in a good amount of time to help the
Hmm.
team to
Hmm.
win the next game the next week, when
Got it.
in fact they had other things that they were tending to.
How do you feel? Peter asks, how do you feel about gambling's effect on the game? There's been some baseball players who've been caught if just because they see all the coincidences of how they're playing a pitcher. There's bets now on every little aspect of the game. I'm guessing you're aware of this, and so
Yep.
um, like the first pitch is going to be a ball or a strike. Like they'll have a bet on that, and so a
Yeah.
pitcher can control that, and so when they saw that he was throwing balls that were obviously in the dirt, 3 or 4 straight starts, they knew that he was probably, and
Yeah.
I guess he fessed up to it. That's just one example. I don't know. There's a lot of
All
sports.
those prop bets, you used to only see them at the Super Bowl, and now live sports, like you said, you can bet on every outcome of every play. Um, yeah, I think it's crazy. I mean, I never dreamed in my wildest dreams when we used to have the talks about gambling in Philadelphia, and the mob being there. And if a guy buys you a drink, that's sitting at the bar, uh, don't try to buy him a drink back, accept the drink, but all people are looking
Hmm.
for is information and who's healthy and who's not. It was a real deal. Skinny Joey Merlino was a real deal in Philadelphia, as a member of the mob that ran the Philadelphia mob. Real guy. You can't make the name up. And I remember he lived like a block away from our practice facility, so you almost could have watched us practice.
And they were in charge of bookies and doing all that underground
Oh
gambling.
yeah, I mean they were doing it all.
Um, what about like ESPN Bet and DraftKings sponsoring this or that, and that all being everywhere? Do you think
Well,
that's a tarnishing of the integrity of the game, or
it is the players that are involved, and I
sure?
mean it's a very, very, very strict mandate from the commissioner, that just the same way is it your responsibility to interview with the media and not interview with the media. You can be fined for that. Obviously, betting's a huge deal, and even if it's betting on your college team, I mean, it's a no-no. It's just, if you're in a National Football League, here's how you make your money, and you got to do it this way. But you can't do it by betting.
So if you're a member of the NFL, you're a player in the NFL, maybe any member, a coach, whatever, referee, cheerleader, I don't know. You're not allowed to say bet on who's going to win the NCAA basketball championship.
You're not. As a matter of fact, I've heard of people that have been admonished for that, and not just in professional football, in college football, putting together a bracket and passing them out, and everybody filling out. That's gambling.
Yeah.
And you just are expressly forbidden from that.
Okay. Okay. So here's a question about Minnesota culture from Monica. She says, "What's the real reason the Vikings can't get to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl ultimately?"
Gosh, I don't think it's one size fits all. A lot of times you go and say, well, it's because they don't have a quarterback. I don't know. I mean, every year is a different set of circumstances, and every year stands on its own merits. And Kevin O'Connell would tell you that, from their 13 and whatever they were 13-3 last year. None of those things count for nothing this year. When they start in Chicago on Monday night, I mean, all he's looking at is how do I get them ready? And now I got a short week after that to try to get ready for game number 2.
No, you're so in it. That's amazing.
You're in it.
Yeah.
You're in it, and you can only take them one at a time. You should have beat them. You know what? They were next one on the schedule. You to go through the folly of saying, well, that's a win, that's a loss, that's a win,
sure,
that's a win. You think you can do that, but you never know what the circumstances are. It's okay. You mean the quarterback's out of the game now? He snapped his Achilles tendon, and you don't have another guy that can be a caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many circumstances. I mean, typically you see the healthy teams are playing in January.
Right. Would you have kept Sam Bradford or Sam Darnold?
I you know what? I don't know the monetary circumstances of that. I don't know what they would have had to pay him. They kind of had him on a 1-year deal, and he was going to be a free agent. And I mean, Kevin would tell you, having played quarterback, you earn the right to go to free agency. You earn it, and what you can make is typically in your second or your third contract. Even though Sam was a first round draft pick, but he earned the right to be able to do that. Now we'll be able to judge better in a different spot in Seattle now.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much gets to their questions. I have one more question for you, and that's you're not a coach, so you have the luxury or the flexibility to look at the schedule and say win, loss, win, whatever. And so when you look at the league as a whole this year, who are you? Give me who you think will go to the Super Bowl, who will win the Super Bowl, and then maybe a sleeper team.
Oh man, I don't know how great I am at handicapping. My brother used to ask me every week about the games, and he is a bettor. And you look at it from a coach's perspective. You're so in it, that I say, boy, I don't know. If we play our best football, we're still going to have a tough time. He was able to parse. Yeah, you're telling me you can win this game, or what you're telling me you're not feeling very good about, and then whatever the point spread was. So I'm going to tell you, Kansas City's not going to have a great fall off, and they got the guy in the right position at the quarterback position. He admittedly had an off year, but he's been great. And I know what kind of fiber is woven through him. So I have an idea that they'll be good again. I think Buffalo will be good again. I think the usual suspects in the AFC. Somebody would tell you that hey, the Broncos or San Diego or Pete Carroll at Vegas is going to really impact it. It'll be harder in that division, but I think Kansas City's probably the top of that division, and then Gosh, NFC wise, you know, I mean, the Eagles are loaded again. They're loaded, and of course, they're going to start out on that Thursday night against the Cowboys, who have a new head football coach, and that's always a crapshoot.
Well, it must be so exciting for you. I mean, all your favorite teams, at least. Well, last year you had three of your favorite teams doing so well, and two of them went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, my family did a fantasy football deal, and I was like the loser in all of it because I first of all I wasn't consistent. Sometimes I didn't know that a guy had been hurt, and I still had him on my roster or whatever.
Mm.
Fantasy is just that. It's fantasy to me.
Are you
I know some
playing?
people that play. I know people that play in 3, 4, 5 leagues. And it boggles my mind. I'd rather watch them than handicap them.
What's your relationship with the NFL now? Like, are you do you have an obligation to them anymore?
No,
It,
no,
do you collect pension from them, or
I do.
is there any relationship? How does that? Okay, so there's
Yeah,
some.
yeah. They have a pension program for coaches and for employees, and yeah, it's a great pension plan. That's why I take it in
Sure.
Florida, so to get away from the
Mm,
Minnesota state tax.
right, right. You're not the only one, that's for sure. Okay, I do have one more question. So, are you going to go to Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift's wedding?
My grandkids have already asked me that. Asked last night. I'll go if I'm called. We'll see. I mean, that's going to be a hot ticket, I'm sure. And I doubt well I'll be doing that. Hopefully, I'll be going to watch him get put in the Hall of Fame in 5 years when he's done.
That'll be the pop culture version of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it'll be a must-see TV deal.
Maybe they'll
They can make a
televise it.
special out of that,
Pay
probably
per view.
extravagance. Yes. Yeah.
Oh boy. If I thought football was sacred and they're watering it down for the sake of entertainment, that would sure be something if they took the sanctity of that sacrament of marriage and turned it into a pay-per-view thing. That would.
The paparazzi's going to be there now. You know
Well,
they're going to
that's
find a
true.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, now they can just live stream it.
Yep.
Hmm. Well, hey, thanks so much for sharing your perspective. You are um, you're a part of Minnesota, sports history uh, during your tenure here. So we thank you as Vikings fans for giving us those years that saw some really good highs in addition to the lows, and just for being like a coach's coach and doing this for so long. How long were you coaching just in general?
For 40 years. Yep.
Yeah, wow, just a real lifer. Well,
20 in college and 20 in NFL. So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks a lot for your time today, Coach.
I'll see you down the road, huh?
All right, bye.
All right, Brandon. Bye bye.